have a nice audience today. Thank you all for attending the LPI Intern Story. This is our second panel, and we're so happy to have you joining us today. My name is Sherelle Webb, and I am one of the education specialists at the Lunar and Planetary Institute. Recently promoted, but you know, it's not about me. It's all about you all tonight, and I'm so happy that you decided to join us. I have my partner in crime, Grace, who will introduce herself to you all momentarily. But again, thank you everyone for joining us. Grace?
Hey everyone, my name is Grace Bodwin, and I'm also an education specialist at LPI. We're really excited to bring this series to you. This is the second of our LPI Intern Stories series. We hope you were able to join for the first one, but it's fine if you weren't. And then there will be a third one coming in mid-August, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of this event. But hopefully you enjoy it. This is your opportunity to ask questions of our interns. So go ahead and start thinking of some now, and Sherelle and I will tell you a little bit more about the event. Maybe now. Sherelle, do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. So if you've never attended a Zoom webinar before, this is what we're in right now. So you might notice some differences. Because it's a Zoom webinar, you're not going to be able to turn your cameras or your microphones on. So to communicate with us, we want you to put your questions into the Q&A. So at the bottom of your screen in the toolbar, you should see a little chat box feature called Q&A. And if you click on that, that's where you can enter your questions. And the panelists and the host will be able to see it. And that's how we'll answer your questions live. If you have trouble with the Q&A feature, or you have something else you want to say, just make a comment. You can put it into the chat box, and we'll see that too. Finally, this is an hour-long program. We have a couple minutes at the beginning to kind of warm up, have some poll questions that we ask you all to please participate in. And then we'll have a couple poll questions and a little bit of a wind down at the end. But the rest of the time will be spent talking with our interns about their experiences and getting your questions answered. We also have closed captioning that's going on the screen right now. If that bothers you, it can be turned off, put it in the chat, and we can tell you how to do that. Okay, I don't think I missed anything, but if you guys have questions, you can ask about that as well. Yeah, so Sherelle, do you want to tell us a little bit about the internship?
Absolutely. Again, thank you guys, and welcome, welcome, welcome. So the LPI Summer Intern Program in Planetary Science provide undergraduate students with an opportunity to perform cutting-edge research, learn from widely respected planetary scientists, and discover exciting careers in planetary science. During the 10-week internship, students have the opportunity to participate in enriching activities, including lecture and career development workshops. The summer interns will work one-on-one with the scientists from the LPI on the NASA Johnson or the NASA Johnson Space Center on a research project. Interns are selected by the project advisors who look for authentic excellence or academic excellence and scientific interest and background compatibility with their specific project needs. So students with majors in a physical or natural science, engineering, computer science, or mathematics are preferred, but all eligible students will be considered. So if you're in our audience and that fits and you fit the profile, feel free to apply for the 2022 applications when they become open, and Ms. Claudia would be, she's available here, and she's one of our panelists, and she would tell you about that specifically. So you can ask her questions specifically, put in a chat box in the Q&A if that is you. So let's go ahead and get started with our poll questions. We want to see who's joining us this evening. So we're going to stop share for one moment, and we're going to do a poll question. We want to know who's in our audience. By answering the question, have you ever attended an LPI event before? And if not, that's okay. Welcome. We welcome you and we want you to be comfortable. We certainly do not want this to be the last event that you attend. Okay, who's in our audience? So majority are saying no. All right. Well, guess what? You are welcome. So we're going to end that poll and then we're going to share results. So we have majority saying no. So again, welcome. And then we have a second one. So tell us about yourself. Who are you that's attending? That percentage of students are people who have not ever attended an LPI event. Who are you? So we have some high school students, undergraduate students, graduate educator, scientists, and community member. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All righty, we're gonna wrap this one up as well. Thank you so much for participating. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our series of questions. Remember that we want you to use the Q&A for asking questions directly to our panelists. Grace, you want to take it away?
Totally. Yeah, so just to remind those in attendance, Sherelle and I have some moderated questions that we're going to pose to our panel, but we really hope that we get some questions from the audience. So during this time, while Sherelle and I kick it off, this is when you can enter questions into the Q&A. All right, well, so first off, just to get an idea of our interns' experiences, could we go around and have you guys introduce yourselves? So I'll start with Camille. She's to the right of me on my screen. But after that, I'll say who's next, but let's hear your name, the college that you're attending, and your year in the college and your major. And then we'll get to Devin, who is our alum. But so Camille, could you take it away?
Yeah, thanks. My name is Camille Goodale. I'm currently attending the Evergreen State College, and next year will be my last year, so I'm graduating 2022. My major, I would say, if I were to really like generalize it, chemistry probably. Evergreen is slightly unconventional about declaring majors, etc., but chemistry is definitely a big focus of mine. And I'm working with the LPI staff scientist Kendall Lynch on a really cool project looking at subsurface environments in Gale Crater.
Awesome. And yeah, I can see the periodic table behind you. So I think the chemistry major might sort of fit. All right, next, could we hear from Marcus?
Howdy, my name is Marcus McEnroe. I go to Texas A&M University, and I am a senior geophysics major.
Fantastic. And next, could we hear from Danielle?
Hi, I'm Danielle. I attend Colorado School of Mines. I will be going into my junior year, and I'm majoring in geophysical engineering.
Okay. And next, we'll have Madeline.
Hi, I'm Madeline Frank. I just graduated from the University of Michigan in Earth and Environmental Sciences, and I'm going into a PhD program in petrology.
Fantastic. All right, so we've got some earth scientists. And Devin, will you tell us about your background?
Hi, I'm Devin McQuaig. I attended University of Houston for my undergrad, and I majored in geology. And now I am still at University of Houston, but as a second-year PhD student, also studying geology and geochemistry.
Fantastic. And then lastly, we'd like to hear an introduction from Claudia, please.
Thank you, Grace. My name is Claudia Bellard. My camera doesn't work. My name is Claudia Bellard, and I've been with the LPI for 13 years and also the Senior Program Coordinator for the LPI and Super Program. Back to you, Grace.
Thank you. So for those in attendance, if you have questions about more of the administrative and operational side of the internship, Claudia is our expert here. She can help us answer those questions. Okay, well, so I'm going to kick it off with some of the questions for our interns. So first off, for Camille and Madeline. Could you guys tell us a little bit about the kinds of classes that you're taking currently in college, or you have taken?
Yeah, sure. So in college, so since I just graduated, what I did take when I was an undergrad is I took Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, and DiffyQ, but that is not needed if you are going to be a geoscientist. I'm just an overachiever. I also took a lot of earth science centered classes that were really, really cool. I got to take oceanography, mineralogy, petrology, which is really just geochemistry of the solid earth. And then we got to look at a lot of really cool rocks under microscopes. I took physics, I took fun social sciences class. The nice thing about it is you really get to choose what classes you want to take in college, which is really nice. You can decide if you want to take a lot of science or a lot of social science or history. And I still graduated with a science degree, but I took a lot of just fun classes in history. And I would recommend to have a fun class that you just something you're interested in and something you're passionate about, at least once a semester, so you don't hit that drag of burnout if you have one class you really look forward to.
What do you think was the most like random or off-topic class that you took?
I took Egyptian culture and religion my sophomore year, and that was my favorite class at UMich. Like, it was a really, really cool class.
Very cool. Yeah, not at all related to your major.
No.
Great. What about you, Camille?
Yeah, so Evergreen's curriculum is slightly different. Instead of only having like specific classes to choose from, they have things that are called programs that incorporate multiple different subjects. So while you'll be learning, say, for my first year, it was like general chemistry, general biology, and historical geology, but it was all into one program. And so there would be a lot of like crossing over and like referencing other subjects and just like really giving you an idea of how in the sciences, the lines that separate one area from another are pretty blurred and they often cross over. And usually if you're pursuing a question or trying to answer something, you'll end up pulling from a bunch of different fields. And so that's what I really like about Evergreen, the programs that they've offered and the insight that it's given me into like what real world science feels like, because they'll often accumulate into a final research project or something where you're combining all these skills and information that you've learned. So one of my favorite programs was environmental analysis, which included analytical chemistry, aqueous geochemistry, biogeochemistry. I could be missing a few of those. Analytical geochemistry, it was all this really interesting stuff that kind of helped you like learn about systems like globally and like how the climate worked, et cetera, which was really interesting.
Yeah, all the prefixes with
Yeah.
chemistry. Well, that's fantastic. And I think that's a really good point to emphasize that science in general, but planetary science especially, is so multidisciplinary, right? You could come at it from so many different backgrounds. And so that kind of leads me to my next question for Danielle. How did you get interested in your major? And then, you know, any of you feel free to jump in afterward and let us know if this was something that you always knew you wanted to do, or if maybe it was a little bit of a surprise.
So for me in high school, discovering like what you're interested in is very important, and I took several classes like astronomy, geology, and different physics classes, and it wasn't until my senior year that I realized I really liked those. And so in our English class we had to do a research presentation, and so I focused on the different majors offered at my school. So that's how I found geophysics.
Thank you. And anyone else, did you come into college knowing that you wanted to pursue, earth science or even science in general? If you did, that's a useful perspective. And if you didn't, I'd love to hear about that as well.
I can share. I did not come in looking for geology. I started off with marine biology because I thought dolphins were amazing and marine life was really interesting. And then I hated bio. It was not my thing. And so I went into just like a business major and then a general major. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. Finally, I moved to Texas from a different state, and my science credits weren't enough. And so they're like, you need to take another science. I was like, well, okay. And I took geology. And then 2-3 weeks into the curriculum, I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I've been looking for. And I didn't even realize it. So yeah, it took me a while to find my way, but now I am definitely on the path that I want to be on.
It found you. We have a quick question from the, oh, never mind. It was answered. Perfect. Okay, well then I'm going to move on to our next question, which is in the same vein for Marcus. And that's, your background, your education has been in geophysics, but how did you get interested in planetary science?
Well, I've been interested in space longer than geology, I think. It's always been a really, really cool thing that I've always wanted to know everything about. The rocks were kind of a side hobby. I'd collect rocks here and there until I realized, okay, this is something I really want to keep doing. And then planetary geology just made sense. I can study space and I can study rocks at the same time. Like, if you look at all the incredible things you can find on Earth, so many of them are there because of geology. The Grand Canyon, Oldonyo Lengai, somewhere in Africa, I think Ethiopia, Zhangjiajie, the giant rock pillars in China, all of that. But if you look beyond the Earth, there's even more insane stuff. Like, you've got the largest volcano in the solar system, Olympus Mons on Mars. I think it's the size of Arizona or something. You've got these swirls on the moon that are believed to maybe be the result of magnetism permanently imprinted into its crust. You've got oceans of liquid water under an icy shell in the outer solar system. It's just, there's so much cool stuff out there.
That is amazing. And I was curious, I think a lot of people are just naturally interested in planetary science, but, I'm curious, did A&M offer classes that supported your interest, or did you find your internship kind of from your own interests, basically?
There is a planetary geology class, and several of the professors do get involved with planetary stuff, but for the most part, it's been outside my major doing research work and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ewing especially, he was, I think, a principal investigator on the Curiosity mission. He's at A&M. So I've been talking to him a lot, as among other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Yeah. So just kind of getting out there and making your own connections, even if it's not an established curriculum at your school. So there are a couple more questions I'm going to circle back to about academics sort of moving forward. But before we get to those, I think we'd like to hear more about the internship and how you all got involved. So Danielle, do you want to tell me how you found your internship?
Yeah, so I actually found it during COVID, since there was COVID and many internships were canceled or stuff like that. I decided to take a summer class, planetary geology. We had to create an introduction video. And so I introduced myself, my interest in planetary geology and geophysics. And then a grad student in my class, she's a former LPI intern, Sarah Dietrich. And she talked to me and she's like, hey, if you'd ever be interested in an internship with LPI or NASA or anything planetary, to reach out to her. So that's how I found out about this, through networking.
And Devin, will you tell us about how you found the LPI internship?
Sure. Yeah, my professor, Dr. Lapin, is one of my geology professors. He kind of sent out this email about the internship. And so I ended up going to his office to kind of get a better understanding about it and tell him that I was planning to continue on at U of H for my grad studies, and just try to figure out if I should go for the internship or take summer courses to try to get through my degree. And he's like, just apply. And he was like, since you're going to be around, would you be interested in working in our geochemistry lab? I was like, well, yes, of course I would. That would be amazing. So that really, it kind of kicked this whole thing off and helped me figure out that, yeah, this is something that I really want to do. And it strengthened my application because I had clean lab experience. So talk to your advisors, meet with your mentors, and let them help you. Just share with them what you're wanting to do so that they can help you on your way.
That is such a good point, to reach out and to just go for it. And this internship is a paid internship. You'd be supported throughout the process. And there's more information about that in the link that was posted in the chat. And you can apply multiple times. So it's really worth it to just go for it.
Can I actually add on to what Devin said about talking to an advisor? I actually annoyed the absolute heck out of one of my favorite sophomore year professors. I would email him all the time. I went to his office hours, and then I took his class fall semester of my sophomore year, and during my junior semester I emailed and asked if he had any research projects I could do, and he actually had a really cool one where I helped on GIS, so the mapping system software. I put Michigan completely on solar power, kind of doing that, trying to figure out that research problem. And then I bothered him even more the next year, and I got a senior thesis with him. So yeah, don't stop bothering those professors that you really like. Just keep emailing them, keep showing up, like bother the absolute heck out of them, because they will open doors for you and really help you dive into your research and interests and all of that. So don't stop bothering professors that you like, because you will find good opportunities with them.
That's great. Yeah. And anybody else? I mean, how did, for those of you who've made connections with professors, with research staff at your schools, how did you meet them for the first time? How did you develop that connection? I know for me, oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
A professor that I had taken classes with for a whole year, actually, because of Evergreen's program. And, there were field trips involved, training. So it's really easy to get close and develop really good relationships with faculty and teachers at Evergreen. So after my first year studying with her, I actually got a summer internship with her. And she, I think, is a collaborator with Kenda, who is at the Lunar and Planetary Institute. So that's how I was introduced to Kenda and the work that she's doing. So.
Yeah, you never know about these connections. And I think, in addition to just having classes and field work is a big one where you can meet people. And go to office hours. Just go to office hours. When I was in college, I was really intimidated the first 2 years to go to office hours. And then I just started going, and suddenly I had people to write me recommendation letters and people to network with. And so yeah, go to office hours, talk to your TAs, your graduate student teaching assistants. People really want to work with undergrads and get them involved in research. And that leads me to my next question. So Madeline, will you actually tell us about the previous research that you had done and how doing research is different from academic work?
Yeah, so I actually started research my freshman year of college. I was involved in a campus, so it's called a living community. So we lived in the same dorm, and we all decided to take research projects as freshmen. And that's when I was still pre-med. So I thought I was going to be a doctor. But then I started looking at all these research projects, and I'm like, none of these medical ones sound really fun. So I found this environmental ecology project about bee diseases. So I was like, I will apply to that one. That one sounds really cool. And I did work on bee RNA diseases for 3 years. I stayed in that lab, and then I was able to stay in that lab. Well, I also decided I wanted to do geology instead of ecology. Research you really just need to look for the opportunities at your university because they will publish them. They want a lot of undergrads to get into research. So if your university has freshman opportunities for research, I would heavily encourage that. As it being different from academic work, I thought it was a lot more fun because you're not really that anxious about a grade. You're more anxious about results and putting in the work to get those results and having a really great relationship with your advisor and being able to talk to them and find these results. And most importantly, it's a lot more fun. For me, at least, I thought it was really fun to go into the lab and just put on a podcast and start doing, grab my pipette and start, doing those RNA reactions. I think it's a lot, like once you get better at research, it's also, you have a lot more freedom in what you do and you can be more independent, I would say. As soon as you build that relationship up with your advisor, they give you a lot more freedom to do like take whatever path you want. There's a lot more freedom in research than academic work, I would say.
Thank you. And same question for Marcus. Can you tell us a little bit about your research experience?
I actually approached Dr. Ewing my senior year of high school about it. I was doing a independent study course. He said, not quite yet, get some university classes under your belt first. So then I went to university and I took his planetary geology class. And one day after class, I just randomly walked up to him because I wanted to share a random Star Wars geology trivia. And then he just looks at me and he's like, would you like to do a research project? So that was how I got into research. So yeah,
That's awesome.
Contacting people early gets you on their radar, in other words.
It absolutely, yeah. And I kind of want to follow up on both of your answers, but open this up to all of our panelists. We have a question in the Q&A from Bennett that asks, is it hard to translate research findings into the format of a publishable paper?
So I haven't had to write like a formal scientific paper myself yet, but I have had to write reports in that style just to get like credit, get my research credits and stuff. It's not fun. It's not fun. I want to be like, hey, here's what I did and write it out in a fun and engaging way. But no, it's like you've got to go into as much detail as possible, use fancy words. There's a reason these are hard to read.
Yeah.
So
go ahead,
sorry.
Madeline, please.
So I just wrote my senior thesis, which is phrased a lot like a paper that would get published. I would say it is very difficult at first, but the more times you have to write papers like that, it gets a lot easier because it's the same formula. It's just you have to learn the formula before you can get really comfortable with writing these papers. And I try to be an optimist when I'm writing these and think of it more as like telling a story. Because you're saying, you're introducing the problem, you're giving the methods, and you're giving the results. Make it a story, because I like to think of geology as you're telling a story. So if you think of it like that, it's not as hard, and you get used to it the more you have to write these papers. Because I've had to write about 3 of them. Like 2 of them were just class reports that we had to model after scientific papers and write them in that way. So if you are in a science track, some of your classes will probably have you do assignments like that. So you will get comfortable before you end up being in the spot to publish a paper, probably.
Yeah, I would add a little bit to that. I've never actually written a published paper yet, but like Madeline said, a lot of the classes I've taken have required a research paper style format. So I've written the whole thing through it, like in that same scientific format. And honestly, it's one of my favorite parts about research projects that I've done is the writing part, because I've always loved writing. And love the approach, like Madeline said, of like making it a story, because science communication is a really big focus of mine, and like wanting to share that information in a way that gets other people excited and like so that they can understand what I did. And like But I also wanted to say that I also spent a lot of time reading scientific papers, like starting from a freshman. Like I can't even count how many scientific papers I read as a freshman. So just like that, reading them over and over again really ingrains the format style, and like you can kind of think about what papers worked, what papers were easy to read, what you would change about certain other papers. And so that helped a lot, just reading.
Yeah, and of course, there's a big gap between doing the actual research and then writing the paper. There's so much interpretation and processing that goes on. And that's something that you'll learn how to do in your science classes, is figure out what to do with data to actually pull a story out of it. And then you're taught how to write about it. But that's a tough thing to do. And it's important to remember that especially scientists are almost always part of a team of people with different strengths. And if your strength isn't writing, someone can help you with that. If your strength isn't data processing, someone can help you with that. And so if you're thinking about applying to an internship, play up to your strengths. If you're a great writer, emphasize that. If you're really great with Excel, man, emphasize that. There are a lot of different pieces and people that come together to produce scientific research. And Camille makes a great point. If you're interested in any kind of scientific research, just start reading. You'll be more and more comfortable with it. So I'm going to take the next question from Bennett. And this asks, have you learned any useful skills through this internship? I'm sure you guys have. Does anyone want to jump out and take this one?
I guess I will, because I really like hearing myself talk. But so I learned how important it is to communicate with your advisor. And it's really up to the advisee, and you can, especially with my relationship with my advisor, the thing that I learned the most, like the skill that I learned, is be honest with them. And if you need an extra time for a certain problem or something that you're doing, communicate that, because it's better to communicate that you need more time than to be in a meeting with them and be like, yeah, I didn't get that done. If you send them an email like a couple hours before the meeting and say, hey, I have all this done, but I still need to complete this, we can meet today, or maybe we can meet tomorrow when I'll have that finished. So a really useful skill is just being confident enough to talk with someone that is in a higher position of you in the research and be able to communicate that you might need extra time or extra insight, because asking for help is hard. I have generalized anxiety. It's really hard to ask for help. It's hard to approach people that have a higher position than I do. But it's a really useful skill to have, is to start building that like communication skill and being able to ask for help, being able to ask for more time or more communication. So that's a really important skill that I learned with my advisor this year, which was really nice to have.
Thank you, Madeline. And I'm sure it's even harder in a virtual setting. But there's a lot of communication skills that everyone is learning right now. So what tips would you give to future intern applicants? So I'm going to ask this one of Danielle first.
So when you're applying, I would suggest like reading about the different scientific staff that the LPI has and their projects, and then seeing like which one you're interested in, and then you can play your application to that, and you can also mention the scientific staff personally in your application, and then I feel like that'll catch their eye to see.
Camille, do you have any tips you want to add?
Yeah, this is more in like the earlier on beginning stages if you're thinking of applying, because I remember I was very intimidated the first time I saw the online application and all the very strict requirements that seemed kind of like gatekeeping, because like Evergreen at least is kind of unconventional. They don't have letter grades, it's written evaluation. So I was seeing things like, okay, required 4.0, this is a number that you need to be able to like provide us. And I was like, well, this must not be for me. Like I don't have a number connected to my evaluation as a student. So that felt very intimidating, but it turned out that LPI was actually like very accommodating and willing to take on alternative applications. And so don't be discouraged basically by how intimidating all of the prerequisites look, and it's still definitely worth applying, and still go for it. And think about the skills that you have. Think about what you can offer. And even if it's something that you don't think is like that big, you learned an instrument or something, a scientific instrument, it might actually be really useful, and it might help you and look like a more attractive candidate who has unique skills. So definitely go for it.
Yeah, and before we get to the question that came through YouTube, I'm going to follow up with you, Camille, and ask, basically what has been your impression of the culture at LPI, and what has it been like to work one-on-one with scientists?
Yeah, I was really surprised. I didn't really know what to expect. Evergreen's the only other like academic institution that I've really interacted with, and I've always been told Evergreen's kind of a bubble. It has a reputation for being a liberal arts school. So I wasn't at all expecting like the warmth and compassion that a lot of the staff have shown. The seminar series has been a really great way to get to know the LPI staff who are hosting it, and they're all very encouraging, very helpful. I love the whole culture of just being able to ask questions from experts and just like pool all these different expertise, and having people work together to answer something or try to help out an intern with a question. Just that willingness to share information and work together and collaborate is all really great.
And Marcus, how has your experience been working with scientists?
It's been really cool. Yeah, I get to see my advisor like often 3 times a week. They can communicate, address problems as they come up. I'm not like waiting on them to answer an email / procrastinating about reading the answer to the email. All of that stuff, it's face to face. Also good for making sure I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's been a problem I've had with my research at the university, is I'm too shy to ask about that. So it's just, okay, I know exactly what I'm doing. I get it all done. And then I'm supposed to write a paper about it, and I have no clue what it actually means. So yeah, that's been really awesome, being able to actually have frequent communication and stuff.
Yeah, kind of get inside the mind of the person who created the project. Yeah, that's great. And I'd like to hear from Devin too. These interns are doing their internship program remotely, but you got to be in person. What was the culture like at LPI? How was it to actually be in and out of the labs?
Yeah, so I wasn't actually at LPI. I was assigned to the scientists at NASA JSC. About 5 of us were there from my intern cohort, and we'd always go over to LPI first because they have the best coffee machine. Really good coffee at LPI. But no, it was great because I got a chance to experience what it's like to work at NASA and to do geochemistry. Well, my research was more petrology based, but still to work on that full time and to experience what it's like to be the kind of scientist that I've been training to be. And the culture was great. Everyone seemed very welcoming. I hadn't really realized how collaborative science is until I was there. We would practice presentations, and I'm not talking about the interns, like other scientists would practice, say, hey, I'm going to be presenting next week on this topic. I'm a little rusty on this certain aspect. Can you watch my presentation and tell me what I might be missing or what questions that the audience may have, that kind of thing. And we got to go and check out places where the astronauts trained. And at NASA, the buildings are very far apart. And so they have all these bikes from like the 1960s, from the space program days, that just keep getting repaired over and over again. And so we're riding these bikes to go to the cafeteria or to visit other buildings. And it was a joy. I really enjoyed my time there. It was very fun. And everyone was so nice, really great.
That's fantastic. I'm going to come back to you, Devin, for a question just after this, but we have 2 questions from Giovanni on YouTube. And so anybody can take these. The first is, how does interdisciplinary research outside of your study, or your area of study, affect your contribution to the overall project? So I kind of think that this attendee is sort of getting at, you know, maybe if you're coming from a diverse academic background, how could you apply that to being a successful contributing member to a project? Do any of you guys have an experience like that, where you feel like you've been able to bring something to the table that maybe wasn't related directly to your scientific curriculum?
I can kind of share something about that. Well, the project that I'm working on it's kind of a mixed bag. And so that's kind of, for me, where the interdisciplinary stuff comes in, because I really love biology and biochemistry and genetics. And I'm also obviously interested in geochemistry. So I'm doing this geochemical modeling, but it's for the ultimate goal of figuring out whether epichlorite reducing bacteria could potentially survive in this Martian environment. And so I'm also studying this Earth, these Earth species, these Earth microbes that are able to reduce perchlorate, and studying like the genes that are required to do it, and looking at the thermodynamics of like the reaction pathways. And so it's, I mean, my project at least is multiple things in that way. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
I think that's great. And I would, just say that, you know, if you're coming from a background with it, almost anything can be applicable. You learn skills in all kinds of different ways. And so Giovanni has a follow-up question. It says, I'm an engineering physics major and I'm struggling with research on geophysics. Most of my curriculum has been around civil engineering, and this focus is new to me. So how would you advise someone to adapt? Any advice?
Don't be shy about reaching out to your peers or classmates if you know people who have taken geophysics. I always liked study groups. I don't know like what resources you have on your campus, whether there's centers where STEM students can come together and collaborate. I know there's stuff like that at my school, which has been super, super helpful. I don't know. I've always learned a lot from my peers. So that's the first thing that I think of.
Yeah, so I'm a geophysics major, and before I came, so the class above me, theirs was more like petrology-based geophysics, but for mine, they're trying to like change that a little bit and make it more like remote sensing or geology-based. So just reaching out to your like major or department and talking about them to figure out like if other students are having this, like the issue of wanting to focus on something else other than civil, or look in areas of special interest and other pathways in your major.
I think that's great advice. Thank both of you guys for answering that. And yeah, I would totally second. I mean, just reach out to the folks in your department and other departments. It's been my experience that earth science people tend to be real friendly and want to help out. All right, we have another question in the Q&A. Okay, this one is pretty specific. This is from Matthew, who asks, has anyone done or is anyone working on research, including applications on viruses or disease spread, that relate remote sensing, image analysis, GIS, utilizing lunar or planetary knowledge? That's quite specific. Anyone working on anything like that? Matthew, that sounds like a really interesting question. I'm sorry that we can't address that here. We have a couple more minutes before we're going to start winding down. We have 15 minutes till the end of our hour. So please put any other questions you have for our interns into the Q&A. And while you guys do that, I'm going to ask Devin, what was your favorite part of the internship? And, you know, now that you've moved on to graduate school, how do you think that it helped prepare you and to take that next step?
Well, it completely just set my trajectory for what I was going to do for the rest of my life. When I went to my advisor talking about this internship, I had never taken any kind of planetary courses at all. It all been straight geology. And so my research project was on the asteroid Vesta, and I had never heard of it. I didn't know anything about it. So I felt really overwhelmed at first when I showed up, and kind of leading to the question we had earlier about, how does your interdisciplinary research affect what you're studying? It contributed to the project because the scientists at NASA, they wanted a different perspective. They have these mindsets that are a little bit like, okay, well, if I see this, then I know I'm going to see that. And so I was looking for minerals in our samples that they're like, those minerals are probably not going to be there because they're not usually there. So yeah, I know I'm kind of going all over the place for the question, but I wanted to circle back to that because having a fresh perspective is important, and it's a little bit underrated sometimes. So don't feel intimidated by not knowing everything. I'd never studied planetary stuff before. Like it's a very welcoming and encouraging environment. And I don't know, that was a really fun part for me.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
So anyhow, it's just, I'll be studying Vesta for my PhD and moving forward. So that's how it impacted my path moving forward.
Yeah, no, I'd say you're totally right. It did set your trajectory. You're studying the same planetary body. That's very cool. All right, well, so we have some fun questions for our interns, just sort of to wrap up. So I'd like to hear from Marcus. What do you do for fun?
Well, like I think it was Madeline said, it's good to have brain breaks, like you've got the fun class in your semester, you've got to have the fun unrelated thing in your free time, because planetary geology is really cool and all that, but it's very mentally intensive. You need to let your brain unwind sometimes. So my big thing is art. I draw obsessively when I have the time to do so. It's been a thing I've been doing for a really long time. I've just sort of been doing art off on my own, and it's definitely a great way of keeping both sides of your brain active.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself drawing research-inspired things, or do you steer clear?
I haven't done it yet, but there has been in the back of my mind this whole idea of, could I draw an asymmetrical crater? Like have the audience just sort of standing there as an astronaut. What would it look like if you were actually to go down and stand on it?
I think this
might wind up drawing that.
Yeah, this needs to be your next piece. That sounds cool. Danielle, what about you? What do you do for fun?
I play soccer for my college, so that's been a lot of fun because I can have like classes, but then I can have a break with soccer practice and then do my homework and continue my studies.
Yeah, that is also a big time commitment. That's impressive. And Madeline, do you want to tell us about your pet or pets?
So my parents have two dogs. One's a black lab who's like 100 pounds, and it's not because he's overweight. He's just big. Like he's almost as tall as me. And then I have a golden retriever named Cricket. And those are my parents' dogs. And at my apartment, I'm about to get a cat, and my roommate just got a lab mix. So we're going to have a dog and a cat at my new apartment. So that's fun.
Aw, I'm all about the cats. Okay, before we move on to our final fun questions, we have one more YouTube question from Giovanni, who asks, is graduate school a mandatory requirement to pursue a career in research, or can you work on research within private institutions? So I'm not sure. Yeah, does anyone feel like they can take this question?
Usually grad school is where you would go if you wanted to pursue a career in research. And a really cool thing is I just got accepted for a PhD position at U of M, at University of Michigan, and I'm actually getting paid to do research there for my PhD. So yeah, I would suggest going to grad school, especially if you can get a stipend and get it paid for, because I'm going to be doing really cool research in petrology. And I'm gonna get a very nice stipend for doing that. That is very livable. I can live in Ann Arbor very, very like worry-free. So yeah, you should go to grad school if you want to pursue a career in research, I would say. And just more so, like if you go to a really good school for research, for grad school, you'll have a lot of fun and you can work on like breaking edge research there too. So it would be a good idea if you are interested in research to go into grad school, because you're going to be doing research there. And yeah.
Thanks, Madeline. And that's a really good point to bring up. It's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, is that graduate schools can be completely paid for and you are also paid to attend. And that's the case in a lot of STEM careers. And I think that's basically the rule for earth science. Well, that's the field I'm familiar, where if you're not being paid to attend your graduate program, then go to a different program because everyone else will pay you. That's what I had been told when I was applying. So that's a good program, or that's a good thing to remember about these programs, because otherwise the potential cost can be a big turnoff. But yeah, like Madeline said, you can be paid to attend tuition free. So it's basically like a job for 5 years. So that's really something that we would encourage if you want to get into cutting edge research is yeah, go get that graduate degree. And Devin, at any point, if you want to answer one of these fun questions, because you didn't sign up for them, you just let me know. If you want to tell us about your pets or what you do for fun, or this next one, what are you most excited about in the field of planetary science? I'm going to let Camille go first, because she told us she wanted to answer this one.
Yeah, so I mean, this kind of goes back to how I first got interested in planetary science, and just like basically just the idea of how interdisciplinary it is, and it's pulling on all these different fields and like answering these really big picture questions where you're actually just like looking at all these systems holistically. I am excited for I also want to say that when I think of planetary science, I'm not separating in my mind like Earth and then space, because like Earth is this really beautiful, amazing floating body, just like all the others. But in my opinion, Earth is the coolest. And, you know, it's the most important to me. And as a young person, I see the climate crisis, and I can't help thinking about how it's going to change in the future and what a like prominent issue it is. So I'm really excited for planetary science to kind of all the tools that are like all the things that we've learned from it, from studying other planets and from collaborating with scientists around the world, to kind of use that, the power that we've built up in that area of science to bring it back to Earth and kind of come up with global solutions and like affect positive change on a global scale on Earth.
It's a great perspective. Yeah, absolutely. Planetary science is going to impact the way we view our own home. I like that a lot. So Marcus, do you have a favorite planet or moon? Do you want to tell us why?
Most definitely. Europa, it's one of Jupiter's moons. So you go out past the asteroid belt, and most of the moons you're going to encounter, they're made at least partly of ice. You look at the surface, it's all ice. And Europa's no exception. But under that ice, there is believed to be an ocean of liquid water. And that's what's really cool. You can see it on the surface. You've got all these big fissures going all over it. There's hardly a crater in sight. Something big's going on. And under that surface, we think there's an ocean. And the really exciting thing is we think the ocean is in contact with the rocky inner part. So there could be hydrothermal vents and stuff like you see at the bottom of the ocean, the black smokers and everything. They've got their own little ecosystems there with no sun. Maybe that could be a thing on Europa too, and that that blows my mind. It's one of our best shots at ever finding life because it's right there.
That's so exciting. We got to get out there. Devin, do you want to tell us something fun? Your favorite mineral? Your favorite pet?
Sure. I'm just going to jump off of what Marcus was saying and share that there is a fiction book about Europa called The Final Six. That's really, really fun. It's about some teenagers, I think, training to become astronauts to go to Europa. It's a really fun book. Otherwise, my favorite planet is also Earth. It's the best one. There's no arguments. I am an avid cyclist, and I'm trying to get more women and on bikes and minimize barriers to cycling. So that's my number one project outside of work and studies.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you guys. I'm done with questions. We're going to wrap it up with a couple poll questions, and so I'll turn it back over to Sherelle.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and launch one of our final poll questions, which is, after attending today's program, do you feel more confident about pursuing a research internship? We're just going to give you a few moments to go ahead and vote, please. And by the way, I want to just say, Marcus, I just felt your passion about Europa, like it exuded. Yeah, so I definitely know that that's your favorite because you were glowing when you were describing it. I don't think that's undeniable at all. At all. Okay, so thank you so much for voting. Go ahead and take a screenshot of that. Thank you so much. And then for the last and final poll question, everyone. After attending today's program, do you feel more aware of how to get involved in a research internship? Give you a few moments to vote. And I also want to take this time out while everybody is voting. I wanted to say that we're going to provide you with information on how to submit questions even after our program today. And so while we are wrapping up that, thank you so much, Grace. Grace has put in an announcement. We would love for you all to join us. Our next LPI intern story, the last and final of our series. I would reveal who's going to be our guest panelist, but guess what? You have to show up to find out because it's a surprise. So we will see you all on August 12th, same time, 3:30 p.m. Central Time for our LPI Intern Stories number 3. And I'm going to provide you now with the final slide, where if you want to go to YouTube to see this recording, this is where it will be featured. Also, in the comment section, we will provide our email addresses for you to email any questions that you may have about this recording. Well, bye everyone. And before we go, I want to thank all of our panelists for participating. And Grace, thank you for facilitating the questions. You did a fantastic job. Thanks everyone for your questions. Also, YouTube Land, thank you also for submitting your questions as well. Miss Claudia, Yolanda, thank you all for attending. You guys have a wonderful night, and we will see you August 12th. Bye everyone, and good night.
Bye. Thank you, Sherelle, for organizing.